I've got our little card of the mama grizzly bear on the water. And let's see, I'll pull up the.
I just want to point out the mama grizzly bear on the water. Yin, water. Not quite a rabbit, but
Yeah.
Oh, it goes. Oh, don't worry, we'll get there.
Sarah's got us. Sarah's got our path. Let's see. Flower stones. Okay, I'll go ahead and read the little verse that goes with it. To inspire us into righteous worth and self-care, who other than this grandma grizzly bear? As we travel from seed, root to flower, through curiosity, action, and focus, we reach a stage where we truly step into ourselves and into our worth. The heartbeat of our work is sustained by a steady pace. Now we can go inward and nourish our sweet selves. The feeling here is one of security, feeling fine in our skin or fur, and reclaiming space to fully enjoy our senses. There is trust in the process and complete trust of self.
Yeah, there's a lot with this one. So because we just had the Lunar New Year, and well, this card, so I had to kind of look it up because the artist of this project has, done different designs, and then it's beautiful how she's connected them too. So in the traditional tarot, this card is the Queen of Pentacles, and it's like grandmother energy. So this like grandma bear or mother bear, this security, this protection. But what's interesting is the Queen of Pentacles, there is a bunny in the bottom there. Sorry, shake a lot. Yeah.
Oh, I do see the bunny.
So and yeah, I'll probably like put the image up, but yeah, so the Queen of Pentacles, there is the bunny there in the corner, and then that represents fertility. So this Lunar New Year was the yin water rabbit. Yin and water are the moon, and then the rabbit here, it's representing things like fertility and luck. And in that you get security. So security, that protective mama bear. So I was like, whoa, yesterday I was having this full on like epiphany. Not only that, this is, I believe it's the 13th card of this.
Yes.
I don't know what they call them, suit.
Yeah.
But so there, she has it as the stones in the traditional tarot. It's the pentacles, but it's the 13th card, and the 13 is also associated with the moon and femininity. So it's like, whoa, lots of femininity. I'm very excited to get into this conversation.
What is the pentacles? I don't really know the tarot at all. What is the pentacles kind of?
So
energy?
Pentacles, other words, coins. Pentacles are coins, and so it's going to represent things like prosperity and abundance.
Knowledge, I think, as well. Is it linked to like intelligence and things like that? I don't remember much.
Well, I'm not an expert.
The wands is more, or something like that is more, I think the way I associate it is more with like earthly forms and materials. I mean, yeah, things that manifest in a form.
The physical
realm.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that prosperity piece. I love those threads. Okay, so Queen, water, moon.
Yeah, grandma,
13,
security.
Grandma. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a springboard.
The only thing that comes to my mind is like that trust in yourself, that part, that the ending, that like stepping into who you are, accepting, embracing who you are. And I recently in collective journaling wrote something about being the queen that you were meant to be. But I was writing to the church, ecclesia, and it wasn't a very positive thing. I was writing about many characters, many female characters in novels. I had to look their names up, so I don't know it the woman from Les Mis that sing I Had a Dream, Fantina or something like that. And so a lot of women who keeps waiting for the man to come and rescue them. Like the church is still waiting for the king, so the return of the king. And so I wrote like, yeah, it's probably not going to come back. Like, accept that. Put on your crown and be the queen that you were meant to be, even if it means you have to be the solitary queen. And why? Why? Because your sister, Phusis, nature, needs you to woman up and rule again. Then.
This is really surprise, no surprise. But it's like you're just speaking like my story of this past week or so, which you know, I went and did that eight-day meditation retreat, kind of got this realization that Zen really isn't the path where I'm going to be in best service to anymore after years and years and years of kind of following that tradition, because part of it is there's many different reasons, but part of it is there's hardly any representation of women in any of the stories or any of the pointers, and I can't see myself in that, you know. And then when I went and did this poetry workshop with David White this past week, the message that resounded clearly was that you are a queen. You are a queen. And it's interesting, I've been reading this book by Martin Pratchell, who I love his work. And he's talking about, he's leading the rites of passage for the young adolescent boys. And the whole mission is to go and rescue the feminine. The feminine's been captured by death, by the underworld, Persephone, right? But not, you know, they're not conceptually Persephone, but the feminine has gone into its season, its cycle, has been taken by death. And it is the male's job, the young boy's job, to go and rescue the feminine and bring it back to the women so that life and abundance can accrue. And I mean, there's so many stories he's telling. It's so beautiful. The boys, they teach the boys to go steal their mother's pot, which is passed down to them, to the women, generation from generation. And the realization there is they have to actually hide themselves under the pot, because the women aren't going to break the pot. They're going to try to throw stones at the little boy to like, no, you can't take the pot. But the pot is like the womb, and it protects them. And anyways, basically they're trying to teach the boys, like, your mom is you're not a child, and your mom is not your lover, and you have to separate from that. But your protection is actually in this feminine kind of womb. Anyway, just really beautiful. So like really stepping into this queendom, and for me, there's like this feeling of wanting a king, you know. And we've talked about this before, just these longings and desires, an initiated king, both who will protect and care for me in a feverish, fierce way, just like these boys are learning how to care for and rescue the feminine. And also so that I can serve too. I want to serve as well, you know. And that's why I was saying I was all nuts a little bit earlier, because I felt like there's a longing for a spiritual husband, which is a weird thing for me to claim and speak. And then feeling like there was maybe something there, and then it's like, no, you're not not it, you know. So thank you, Lizelle, for bringing that alive.
There's two things. I don't, maybe they're linked, maybe they're not. The first thing that came up, wait, it's I like that story about the what is it, like these rituals for these boys, but I also like that it's a pot. Like that's so significant of, like, you know, the heart of the home, the thing where everything starts. That's where you feed people, that's where you create things. And it just reminds me of this thing that, like, my grandma And I think every decent household back home would have like this super old cast iron grill that has like layers and layers and layers and layers of like, I don't know, whatever thing forms on top of it, and it's become like a glass basically, and we use it to make like the Venezuelan version of tortillas, which is like also corn based but a bit thicker and smaller. So you grill it on that thing, and I've always had this image for a long time. It was like that's when I'll know that I have a home, when I have one of those in my house. Like when it's at that level of like black layers of thick crystals on top of my cast iron grill. I was like that's how I know that I've made something. So I thought it was interesting because the pod brought me that image, and in my case, or in many cases, right, like sometimes people get those from their family, right? They inherited them from their mothers or their grandparents or something. So that's one thing that was interesting. The other thing, that jumping back to the king and the queen and stuff like that, I mean, this was a while ago, maybe more than a year ago, but I remember going through this phase where I remember having this conversation with, I think with Kevin, with some of the guys from CJ. I was like feeling like, I feel like if I'm a kingdom, then my mind is like a queen that has gone a little bit mad, and then the body is like this very lovesick husband who's just like so desperate to please her every whim, and he's so powerless, but she's so gone and delusional. So she's at the point where like she will want everyone in the kingdom to, I don't know, dress like a rabbit, and he will make it happen, and he knows that that's not reasonable, right? Like he knows that that's not how he should be ruling his kingdom, but he's so desperate to make his like queen's dreams come true that he's failing to be an actual good king. And I don't know where that image came from, but I remember struggling with it for a while, of like this reconciliation between mind and body, and feeling like my mind was a queen gone mad.
Off with their heads, off with their heads.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what he wanted, he might have made it happen.
Wow.
It speaks to the dangers of your body trying to be there for everything, and sometimes maybe that's a mad queen. But yeah, I don't know. That's what came up when you guys were talking about that stuff.
Yeah, that was interesting that Lizelle brought up off with their heads and like the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, because okay, there was like two different stories there with Holly talking about the boys, and what I was thinking of, imagine if it was the initiation for boys to save the feminine. Okay, and then that's juxtaposed onto Issa's story about the king that actually is just hand and foot serving this queen, even though she might, have gone delusional. And so what I was thinking is like what the feminist movement has kind of transformed into. And for me, it seems aggressive. It seems very masculine. And so in that way, it's kind of like a delusional queen who is aspiring towards the king's goals, where she has this beautiful place as the Queen of Pentacles, of the security, of the fertility, of, that protection that the feminine provides, which is that pot, the pot that, the boys will use to protect themselves. So there was just like, whoa, a lot going on with both of your stories combined, and how that's like full spectrum of feminine, masculine, and boys and girls. And so that was really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting because the author, he doesn't know all the girls' initiation stuff is kept secret. But anytime they do any sort of initiation or any sort of ritual, there's always a masculine and a feminine version. Like there's always the two are always represented. The poles are both there. But the ultimate thing is that the deeper marriage, right? And this is how I feel. It's like, like I said, like a spiritual husband. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck is that belonging? But I sense the ocean and the moon have put that there. they've put that there, and then they're actually have been asking me to whisper it back to them. But the ultimate marriage is to the divine. The ultimate marriage is to nature herself, and all the other stuff is bonus. But that there's no human being that can ever sit on that throne of that ultimate marriage, that ultimate being ultimately wedded to nature and the sacred, which is like, it's so beautiful, you know. It's like, it's, I don't know, it's just, there's a hole that no one will ever be able to fill but her, and she's accessible all the time, everywhere and everything. And so it's just, yeah.
I'm now very much playing with the idea, and this is very unformed, so be patient with me. Just as there will never be a man who will be able to be the real spiritual lover or husband, let's say husband, because we want to make this real and lasting and committed.
Mm-hmm.
The real spiritual lover, so will we never be able to be the real spiritual wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we and the man will be true symbols, could be true symbols. And by participating in the symbology of that divine marriage, that is how we can feel spiritually whole. Through we can never, no human being can fill our holes, but we cannot fill any other human being's holes either, and we can't fill our own holes. We need the one, and not like in a romantic comedy sense, the one, the good, the ultimate. But we can only participate as symbols of the one, and by that,
what's the quote about when two together speak of the whole? Or I thought there was like a biblical quote.
I think you're thinking of Jesus said, I think before or after his death, but it's when he's gone. So he refers to when the Holy Spirit comes. Is where two of you gather in my name, I will be there with you.
Yeah, that reminds me of that security.
Yeah, he's here now. The Logos is here now. Love is here now. Light is here now. Life is here now, because we are gathered here with the purpose of following and getting to know them.
When I was reading about the Queen of Pentacles, it said something about she cares for the home and she works a full-time job, and I'm like, that's such a modern weird interpretation of this. But that's the thing, is like, that's why it can't be embodied by kind of like a human entity, is because no, actually that's impossible. It's impossible to run an entire household and work a full-time job, because running the household is the full-time job. And so now I'm thinking more of the Queen of Pentacles as like you're saying, like an entity that kind of maybe two come together in, as opposed to it being, you know, a single grandmother, for instance, but just like the great mother kind of essence, as opposed to being able to think about this as, you know, my singular grandmother. Because yeah, it's like there's abundance and security in this card, and the flower of stones, and that can only come from nature. We there is something to having to participate to get that. and kind of like coming together to get that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had this experience a couple of days ago of offering my body to the ocean and just fully surrendering, like, take it, use it, whatever you want to do with it. It's yours. It's your instrument. Play me as you want, and show me how you, like, get all these thoughts that don't serve anybody well, take them and have my mind to become your body and use it. And up above, oh God, there are two condors that were just circling and dancing like a crown of leaves, and it was just so, it was all in service to beauty, is what it felt like, that they were in service to each other, to just dance and to make the sky come alive and to make each other come alive for no other reason other than it's just fucking beautiful. And as we speak and bringing in, quote, that logos and speaking from a place of love for the divine, for the divine, from the divine, in the divine. Just the possibility, it's just pregnant with so much possibility for beauty making and for, I don't know, something just awe-inspiring and moving.
My mind keeps coming back to the Mad Queen. I just love that phrase, the Mad Queen.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really heard it before. I used to, before my Jungian therapy, some of my friends actually called me Regina because I was very much identified as the evil queen. So the Mad Queen. I love the Mad Queen idea. And I was mad. I experienced some madness, but also then furiousness. Recently, I shared it with you. Also about this lack of space for women in religion. And that's not okay. And I don't know what to do about it, because that evil queen part of me is then, because she's still there, of course, is then want to just, fuck all men.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need them. Let's just destroy it and do our own thing underground, like we've done for centuries, millennia. We've been doing our own thing. But a really big part of me knows that that's not the way forward. If we want to transcend ourselves, if we want to give birth to the Ubermensch, if we want to move forward, survive as a species, then we need to come together. The king and the queen. So the king needs to learn how to handle the Mad Queen, I guess. Mm-hmm. And we need to calm the fuck down. Mm-hmm. Or something. I don't know what we need to do. If I knew what I had to do, I would have done it.
Yeah, there's something to that idea of like the wild woman and the container that the masculine provides for that. And that's not to say control. It's not to say chain me down, I'm a wolf. It's let me roam and give me a safe space to do that. Make the safety and security for me to be my wild self, so that you get to experience that spirituality of what it's like. Because there's not as much access. Men really do seek it out of women, or the masculine seeks it out of the feminine, to embrace that spirituality and have that connection with the divine. So yeah, that was something that came up with like how to contain. It's like, be sure that you're not trying to restrain. It's container, not restrainer. And then when you said Mad Queen, so I had a dream a couple of nights ago, and in this dream I was actually eating an ice cream, like one of those that's like a vanilla ice cream with chocolate on the outside, the shell. And I'm sitting on this bench in this hallway, and I dropped some of the shell, the chocolate shell, onto the bench next to me. And I just like, I don't know what sound I let out. In the dream, though, it was kind of like disappointment, but also it was kind of like funny the way that it sounded. I was just like, ugh. And I turned to my right because there's someone laughing at me, and it's Anthony Bourdain. And like, I have like a really deep connection with Anthony Bourdain because he was in my living room every morning when I was a kid, because we used to watch Travel Channel a lot. And he was actually the celebrity death that hit me the hardest. And I remember where I was. I was actually in Texas. I was going across the bridge in Dallas whenever I found out on NPR they announced him dying. And so I had been talking about him earlier in the day, so it was no surprise he came to visit me in my dream. And I just looked at him and I said, "What are you going to do, right?" And he's still smiling. And it was almost like, I'm not going to cry over spilled milk. And then I came online. My consciousness came to me, and I was lucid dreaming, because part of me feels like my consciousness wanted to talk to Anthony Bourdain. I was like, "Oh my God, he's here." And so I came online, and I started to he had already started walking down the hallway, and I stood up and I started to kind of follow him, and I was like, "Hey, Tony." And he didn't turn around. He didn't look back at me. And then I looked to my left, and there was another bench and a girl sitting on the bench. And I went to her, and because I was lucid dreaming, I asked her what we were doing, where we were. And she said, "We're in an asylum." And like fear took over, because this is one of my biggest fears, is being locked up, being constrained, being restrained for expressing myself, for being feminine, for being a woman. And so I fear overtook me, but I asked her, I felt brave in the dream. And I said, "Well, can you show me where we stay, where we sleep?" And so we go to this kind of corridor looking hallway, and there's huge towering doors, and the numbers on the doors are kind of like magical. It looks like kind of like Hogwarts, honestly. And so I'm feeling like a little more comfortable, and then we get in this line of people, and then I woke up. But it was like really something to do with how the feminine can be perceived as crazy. And what was interesting was, normally I'd be afraid of being locked up in an asylum, but in this dream it felt like an adventure. It felt magical. And like Alice in Wonderland, I was like, here's something different. What am I going to do? Cry over spilled milk? No, I'm going to go on this adventure and see what this is about. So it was like really cool dream. But a lot of reflection from this conversation is in that too.
Quite literally spilled milk, because ice cream is frozen milk.
I am that what is that, the goddess that's a bit naughty? Anyway, she's coming through a bit. Like I there's one guy that I really regret not having slept with, and I always refer to, when I think about it, I tell myself, oh well, no use crying over unspilled milk.
Interesting.
That's also
the breast milk that doesn't get used.
yeah.
Because when you were speaking, Sarah, I was thinking, yeah, it's exactly that attempt of men to try to control me that drove me into being the evil queen. It's not a fun thing. And what I was also thinking about our conversations in the past, because you talk about being locked up for being crazy. I was thinking, when we were decided to keep it like you only in the spotlight when you speak, so that you can go by silent. You can hide by being silent. was thinking, well, but we don't need to nowadays be silent and hide anymore. And I was, because then I told myself, well, they're not going to burn us again, are they? And then a part of me said, well, and then I saw myself like on, what do you call it? Those things that they tie the witches to burn them.
Stakes.
Yeah, I saw myself, and then I was like, oh my God, not again. I was like, but the grandma, maybe the grandma has an answer.
Mm. Yeah, it is like a, the crone, the elder feminine that is worthy of, has earned, and gets respect from even the masculine, right? Because we've experienced centuries of the masculine completely disrespecting the great mother, the grandmother, but maybe not in like their own. There is something about it, like men have always been very protective of their mother or their grandmother, I think. I mean, just like it seems like a tradition that has survived over time. So yeah, there's something about like there's no relationship that we can have that's intimate in this kind of, sexual way that I would have with the Aphrodite. I don't know what that stage of the maiden and the mother. And so with the grandmother, yeah, it's just like an evolved relationship of the masculine and feminine, where it's the masculine looking to the feminine for the guidance and the protection.
I don't know if this will tie into it or not, but I heard something, I think last week or so, on a podcast, and it really struck me, and I'm not sure why yet, but it was this kind of scientist who works with like childhood cognition development, stuff like that. And she was saying that in her view, we are human until we hit puberty, and then we are human again after menopause. Everything in between is just like, no. And I thought it was, but I think what she was trying to say is that children and the elder have that beauty and privilege of being able to just create for the sake of creating and playing for the sake of playing, and being able to explore in this extremely like plastic and versatile way that is not about logic, and is not about producing, and is not about organizing things. And of course she says, yeah, I mean, we do need the adults. You wouldn't want a world run by children and grandmas probably, but but it kind of, yeah, it kind of sank with me in this misery of adulthood. And I don't know if something about the wisdom of the grandma is part of that as well. It's like, it's like what you've earned through your life is the right to be a child again, to some extent. And I don't know, that's been kind of resonating with me for a bit.
I was listening to some things on the Ubermensch just before we jumped in, because I was thinking about the death of God, and how we also need to take responsibility for that. Like we killed God, so we need to take responsibility for that, and that is a big part an important step towards self-transcendence, aka the Ubermensch. And I think, but I really don't know Nietzsche well at all, but I was just about at a point where he was starting to say the final step is becoming a child. You're the camel, so the one who just does what society wants you to do. Then the lion, the one who says, no, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to devote my life to having like this day job. I'm going to devote my life to building this garden for my mother. That's the lion. and then you become then you become child again. And I think that's the Ubermensch part. But yes, but I prefer, like Isa, like it's not the child, it's the grandmother, the one who went through all the hardships of life and did take all the responsibility for taking care of others and the pain of childbirth, the pain of life, and then have the right to be a child again. I like that. I like that a lot. Holly, you seem devastated or something.
Devastated. Yeah, I think I'm just sort of sensing into all this. I got actually a really beautiful compliment from someone this past week who said, your eyes hold so much pain and trauma. Like I can see all the pain and trauma in your eyes. But when you smile, it's like a sun, like just radiating. And, I was just thinking about the wide eyes of a young child, you know, who don't yet know all the heartache. And just what you're talking about of like returning back into that kind of wide-eyed gaze, but with the heart of a child, with the smile of a child. Yeah, it was I was really, you know, an earlier version of myself would have been, I think, offended by that, you know, like, oh, there's trauma and pain in my eyes, like, I got, you know, but it was really like, I was really glad he could see that. I was really, really glad he could see that. And I'm just like, there's just some days like where it's all really so beautiful, and some days I don't know if my body can handle it all and take it all, and that's been that longing for that protection that we're talking about, of like, am I meant to just hold all this and try to figure it out kind of on my own and buck up within me and provide that space for myself, or like, is there help coming? Is there help so that I can just be wild and crazy in the way that I need to be, knowing that there's like a reef of protection that allows me to dance and break apart and soar and become a bird. And I don't know, you know, it's scary. It's scary. Both finding that protection is scary, and the possibility of not receiving that protection is also scary.
Two things. First thing, when we are on your land, Holly, I'm going to hold you so long and so tight as the grandmother. And the four of us are going to cry so much together. It's going to be so much fun. Just crying together.
It's enough to water a few trees, I'm sure.
They need it. The creek needs to run again, so maybe we'll make that happen.
Second thing, I don't know what we need to do in order to call the spiritual husband into being, but we're going to see if we can figure out what we need to do that. Because I feel your desire for that masculine safety net as well, very strong, very strong.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I was having just this conversation yesterday. I was like, this paradox. I feel like, I don't know if we all have just one paradox we deal with in life, but if I have one paradox in life, it's definitely about choice, and how I think a lot of my, if you want to call it shadow or whatever you want to call it, I think to some degree stems from feeling like other people were choosing for me and not involving me in their choices, choices that would affect me. And then how this second arc of my life, moving to literally the other side of the planet as further away from them as possible, was to some extent about me making all of the choices by myself. It was like, I'm going to be there alone, and everything I do is on me. And now, kind of, I don't know, through this process that started maybe a year or so ago, kind of realizing that maybe I don't want to make choices alone. Maybe I'm not built to make choices alone. Maybe it's just not fun to make choices alone. It's not about maybe not having the skills or the guts to do it, but it's just like it seems so meaningless to me unless it's something that's embedded in a context that relies and depends on other people. Even the most basic things like feeding myself is, unless I find a way to connect it with not maybe other people, but something else, some ritual, something, then it becomes this extremely drab thing. Whereas if I know that, oh, I'm cooking for someone else, and that changes everything. It just turns me into a whiz chef overnight because it's just like it's different. Like now I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for something that is a bit more. But I also struggle with maybe a safety net or protection or whatever it is, because I've always been very suspicious of idols, of things, of things that make you fall really quickly into I don't know, blind adoration. So I struggle with that, with like recognizing that choices are beyond me, and that's that we need each other to decide together. And then at the same time having the trust and having that, I guess that's where this lady fits in, the trust in myself to know that I won't lose myself just because I'm making choices with others and I'm doing something with others. That's not surrendering my agency or my will. It's actually probably bringing it forth, but it's not as obvious. And yeah, I think that's a big part of my life paradox, if I were to put it in that way. So I resonate a lot with what you said.
With what you just said as well, especially the choices part. The thing that I was most proud of my life after my divorce, which for me was, I always say, the second best choice I've ever made was getting married, and the first best choice was getting divorced. And what I was most happy about is that I can make my own choices now. I always say I've got a tailor-made life, and that's great in a way. But just this past Saturday, I was talking to a friend and I was complaining, like, I have to make all my choices alone. There's no one that can help me decide. And mundane things, I also refer to just, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? Just that. But I think it's beautiful what we're all experiencing here. We're all experiencing how the individual life, being this individualistic, is not being human. It's not what gives us meaning and joy and playfulness. It's also, and that she is popping up that naughty goddess event. It's also not as fun just to play with yourself as to play with someone else. So it's we are a communal species, and we need to take care of others. Like you said, Holly, my desire is not solely to be taken care of. It's also to take care of the other. It's But here I am now in my tailor-made life, and there's just no room for a man. So maybe one that's not very big.
It fits in your front pocket.
A gnome.
Your tailor-made suit.
Well, one that I can just put in that chair and says, okay, be quiet now. I need to read.
That's amazing, because like the image that's been sticking with me like for over a year now, keeps coming back over and over, is Eve being cast and banished into this desolate place where she's never touched. She's like in the fetal position, and that's the biggest fear, is this dry landscape where there's no other one touching. There's no touch ever again. But there's always been this gnome, this little gnome, this little tiny little gnome, and it keeps bouncing up and down and popping around, and it's like, I can help you. And like Eve's like, fuck off, gnome, you can't do anything for me. I'm like, leave me alone. I but I don't know. So it's interesting, because there's a little gnome, a little bearded gnome that's like always in the image, and it's kind of maybe what you're speaking to, just like a little.
I didn't mean that small.
Yeah. But elves are helpful, magic of elves, there's something there. And you're right, we are, not only are we a communal species, but we're a communal body. Like our body is made up. Truly, we can never ever really be alone. That's a myth. Because our body is composed of a community of things.
I always say, if we're gonna fight about pronouns, just call me we. Because I am a we.
I love that. It's okay.
There's so many, like my psyche is many different versions, and my body has many different versions, and there's organisms living inside of me that's part of this whole thing. So and then we have the royal plural, so we can just be the queen as well, like she always they're always we. So
whenever we were talking about choice, it's something that I've reflected on too in collective journaling, like this era and this age, because we aren't kind of forced into a life, we have so many options. We no longer have to fall into the family lineage or do as our father says. But that is so overwhelming, because especially for somebody like me that loves everything. I'm a Gemini, so I'm like, let me dabble. Not too deep, just a little shallow. And I'm just like a little air sign buzzing about everything. And so I haven't specialized in anything. And I'm like a real generalist. And it makes it to where I am not the best candidate for anything except what I want. And so then, I've like not carved a space for myself in the collective. I've only carved my space to be separate from the collective. There's like a fence, a boundary around me. Like I've almost contained my own self to say, I'm over here. I am nothing like you guys. And you can't, like, it's not, you can't completely provide for yourself. It's like I was saying with the Queen of Pentacles being the homekeeper, and also she works a full-time job. It's like that. I've tried that. And it's not, that's what made me leave my ex, was that I was working from home and also taking care of the home. And I was working overtime. I wasn't even just working full-time. I was working overtime, trying to also maintain our house. And, it's just like too much. It's way overwhelming. So that's the thing, is we shouldn't have to completely rely on ourselves, but that means that there has to be some sort of negotiations, or, you know, there has to be things that we're willing to compromise from our own like dreams, desires, self-indulgence, and ego pursuits, where we recognize that we're part of a whole. And, you know, I think that's what, like, in the times when your family did kind of decide what you were going to do, it does seem kind of matriarchal, or, you know, Flower of Stones, Queen of Pentacles, grandmother's taking care of what we're doing, because it was all written based on what she did. And so, yeah, now I find myself trying to rebel against. Even last night, I was listening to my grandma and grandpa fight over the Roku. They call it the, I don't even know if I said it right, but they were trying to watch YouTube. And he's like, I know you don't know how to work the remote. And she's like, well, I never had to watch the TV. And so, like, I thought in my head, I was like, I'm never going to have a husband like that. And so, and that was kind of like, you know, a lot of things about my grandpa, I reflect out and I project onto him things that I despised about my ex, and things that, you know, are internal to me also. So, yeah, that was what I was thinking of, that idea of choice, is that, yeah, if we're given the freedom to make all of our own choices, well, it sometimes does kind of take us down this dark, lonely path.
There's no harder brief than no brief. That's the worst thing you can get as an artist. Is like, oh no, the client is okay with anything. I was like, no. Give me something. Like, give me dimensions, the size of a canvas, the materials I'm allowed to use, like something. I don't know. You can't just tell me I can do anything, please. I'll stare at a blank wall for 5 days and go mad. Like, no, that's not. Please. Yeah.
That's that masculine structure. That's exactly that structure that the masculine provides, so you can play inside of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like rules of a game. It's, you know, there has to be rules of a game, or else there's no game. And I just like think about when people want to play a card game, especially like a drinking card game, and they're like, okay, let's lay out the rules, and my mind's like, no, this is too much. I can't, like, there's no way that I can keep all that together. But like, otherwise you're just gonna sit there and hang out together, which is fine too. But yeah, to do something, to build something, to construct something, or even to create art, there has to be some constraints. Poetry, that's the whole reason, you know, there are constraints, is that you have to be creative within the constraints of that container.
It's like, I don't know. It's like creativity doesn't exist without the container to begin with. Like, creativity is figuring out how to play in the container.
Isa, I'm curious, why is the queen the mind and the king the heart?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess because the mind is louder. It screams more. It has a presence that makes you think that it knows everything. And the heart, I mean, maybe it's a weak heart, but the heart was just like so loving and so heartbroken, honestly, that it was like, I'll go along with all the madness as long as I don't have to break her delusion. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
I have a very loving father, which I grew up never hearing no from him, basically, and it killed me. I never asked anything. I stopped asking anything because I knew that, you know, he won't say no. And there was when I had my, I think you call it prom, something similar to a prom. We went to buy material, and it was quite expensive, and I felt like really bad. But my dad was like, and then this was something that I had to ask for, but I knew that he's saying yes because he doesn't know how to say no. So that was really tormenting to me. And I find it so sexy when a man gets angry eyes, strict eyes. It's like, don't try to control me. But
I relate to that too. I also have a father who didn't know how to say no, or just did not want to say no as a sort of penance, I think.
yeah, exactly the same for me.
So yeah, I also understand that lack of discipline, or that sort of like masculine discipline of like, it's like, it's not the unconditional love of the mother that loves you no matter what, that loves you because you are, right? It's this conditional love that loves you once you prove
Needy love.
that you're doing the
It's a
thing.
needy type of love.
And we kind of need both, right? Like, I think each end kind of corrupts into something pretty bad if you only have that. Like, if you only have the unconditional thing, and then you have these mothers who are like, yeah, I love my son even if he's a drug dealer, not, you know, like it's tragic. So yeah, I don't know. I resonate with that a lot, because I think I also have that, and I also appreciate men that are very disciplined in that sense, because I think I didn't have it growing up. I like that you're talking about sexy things, Lizelle. You keep bringing it up today, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, the card did say we have to be comfortable in our skin or on our fur, right?
I'm just sensing into the pressure for a lot of men and fathers of having to provide, and that potentially saying no is like a stain on their identity or ability to provide. Similar dynamics with my father, and then part of the problem with that too is always saying yes, is then I never get to learn. I don't get to learn how to do the things that he's like, I'll do that for you, he's sacrificing his body for me. It's so beautiful, but then I don't learn how to get taught those ways. But that's how so much I think his worth is I can provide, I can show up, I can do this, I can use my body to protect you and to provide. Which is why I think growing older, it's torture. Like, body can't do as much. So his worth is being threatened in his mind. Of course, it's a story. He's worthy just by being him. But
Well,
I see actually now. Sorry, I just want to say I see now why the heart is the man. I
Right?
I don't have that kind of father. I have the Saturnian father. It sounds like you all have a Jupiterian father, but my dad is very strict to the point of, well, not necessarily like I got grounded all the time, but he could give me a look, and we call it the nose snarl, my sisters and I, or the nose thing. That's really what we just call it, the nose thing. He did the nose thing. But I think that is why I railed against being constrained so much, and perhaps why I attracted in an abusive partner. because I wanted so badly to be rebellious and not do as I was told. Even though I was like prepped to do that, I was actually a really good student, and I, excelled in a lot of things like that. But it was like, yeah, trying to prove my worth to someone that wasn't going to say yes. My mom was the yes woman. And I remember being in the parking lot at one point and telling my mom, you have to tell me no sometimes. So I have, like with my, it did seem backwards for me when you were like, mind is the queen and heart is the king. And I was like, interesting. Yeah, it's like not, and I can see it because the heart can also be associated with the lion and loyalty and that kind of thing too. And of course, like the mad queen, the delusional queen. So that's kind of how I was thinking about it, was without that constraint of my dad, I did have a breaking point. I did rely on the masculine to contain me, and I had to break free from that. And when I broke free from that, I went wild. And I came back to my dad. Fortunately, like I had the wherewithal to know that even if it wasn't so that he would constrain me, it was so that he could tell me what he was afraid of in this world. And that would be my motivation to work myself out of insanity. So that, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out in contrast. I did want to get back to the card. There was this one thing that was mentioned in the excerpt that this artist wrote. Maybe this has to do with like providing too, and like that sense of security that we feel like the masculine is kind of feeling responsible for having to do it all. But in fact, when we're born as women, well, our grandmothers contained the eggs to make us too, right? So like I'm not wording that how you should properly, but in that excerpt it says, as we travel from seed, root to flower, it kind of reminded me of like seed, root, and flower, like that seeding point being in the grandmother's belly, rooting in the mother, and then yeah, you get to grow here in this wild world as the flower. So I like how that was included in the excerpt from the artist. It kind of like counters that idea of the masculine having to be the one to provide, because it's like the seed's there.
Yeah, maybe providing is the frame that makes it weird. Like I just had this image again, because I've realized, I mean, a lot of the time when I seek men or their counsel or something, what I end up seeking, and maybe this is just me, but it's grounding, because I'm the kind of person who's very like, I have a million ideas and I can be like, woo, all over here, and then I do need that person who's like extremely practical and is like, okay, but the world is like this, these are the things you can do right now, like here's a list of actionable items. And at least for me, in that sense, like it, I guess depending how you see it, like, oh, you might see like, oh, you're being tied down, but then for me it's like, no, like I need that grounding. Like I know that I myself, I have too much like creative magic something, and it's very easy for me to be up here. So having it, that structure or whatever that is like, if I'm a kite, like something that holds me a bit, so I stay connected to the ground. Sometimes that's what it does for me, and in that sense I don't see it as constraint, I see it as possibility. But yeah, but that's interesting. And another thing is, when you were mentioning now, like the seed, the stuff, the process, and what I mentioned a bit earlier about the children and the elders, it just reminds me of something I heard once about how it's in this poem that I'll try to find and send you later, but it was basically, there was this line in the poem saying that if you open, I don't know, your wallet and you look at your ID, you'll see the picture of your grandfather. And what the poet was trying to say is that we are so much more like our grandparents than our parents, because by definition we kind of define ourselves in contrast to our parents. So like, I think spiritual wise and in many ways we are much more like our grandparents, because you don't have that that confrontation as much, and also a bit that link of like, you know, the seed and the flower, like the germination of something, the blooming of something that started, you know, time ago. So I don't know, there's a lot of like mirrors and parallels there that I find really interesting.
Just in relation to the masculine, what popped up for me when you were talking of grounding, I don't know if I need to be grounded, but I feel like I need to be held. Just held. The police are
Held in a cell?
You're under arrest.
No.
They're coming for you,
apparently the
Lizelle.
police also thinks I need to be held.
Held
in custody.
That's what happens when you start chopping off heads.
Oh, that's cute. Thanks for the warning.
That's really interesting, that holding. I feel that, and it's I notice that when I feel that feel a lot of like grief or intense kind of grief arise, my body knows innately to go to the ground. Like it immediately wants to just lie on the floor or lie on the earth or lie on the ground. And there's a holding there. There's a deep, deep holding there. It's just so beautiful. Our bodies know naturally when we kind of get out of the way, like how to position and how to posture and where to go and how to be to receive whatever nourishment or however we need to be fed in that moment. I definitely resonate with that kind of moving towards the sky and the bird breaking out of the body to soar, and with lots of creative, joyous, fanciful kind of energy. And then that kind of, that's sometimes where it gets really tricky at times for me, where there's so much of that breaking out, that expansion. And again, there's sometimes this sense of like, I don't know if my body can hold all this. Like it's so enormous. And then that call to be held. And then when I get that call of like, all right, I got to get put back together. I can't live solely in the sky. I cannot live solely in the sky. I got to touch my feet to the ground. I've got to feel that. I got to smell the earth. I got to lick the ground. Immediately, I just want to root. Immediately, I just want to throw my body like onto the earth. There's a holding there.
Yeah, because that's what, as humans, that's the human experience, is we're here to be here. So that's like, I always go back to, you can't stay at the ashram, even though I like to be isolated a lot. But I know that I can't stay by myself, because all I'm doing is trying to eliminate uncertainty of other people. And that's what I'm here to do, is experience the uncertainty of other people and how I reflect out in that way. And so in that sense, it's very feminine and lunar to just trust that I have all the tools that I need to handle it, whatever it is that other people's feelings and emotions bring up. And especially when you're on this kind of philosophical journey, and other people, bless you, other people don't participate in their own self-awareness, their own self-healing. And so you feel like you've kind of got to do that for them. So whenever I go to interact with other people, my mind used to tell me that I have to process it for them, which meant that I had to self-isolate a lot, because the only way that I could process it was by myself. And so like I'm moving now into realizing that, like, if I allow the emotions to come over in real time, then I don't have to go process them later. And there has to be some courage in expressing it when it's happening as it is.
Mhm.
And experiencing, feeling the human experience. So coming back down and grounding and moving through this physical realm that is sometimes just like overwhelming and exhausting. So it's like, definitely need to make space to be by myself at times too, but not in a way where I'm trying to hide from the world and not experience it while I'm here.
I love the words uncertainty of other people, the uncertainty of other people. That's beautiful.
And I just had this image come alive, or this realization that you can't give birth in the sky, you know, like you actually have to, if you want something, if you want to create life, if you want things to continue on, you can't do that in the sky. You have to lay the egg on something material.
Well, because when you were talking about the sky earlier, Holly, and the stuff I said about grounding, and I was thinking like, okay, so if from the masculine I seek grounding, then what is the reverse? Like, what do they seek in me, right? And I was like, I don't know, what is it? Is it beauty? Is it magic? And then I had this image of like, you know, those like water cycle like diagrams and like these like geography nature books where you have like the precipitation cycle and the water goes down and then it goes into the river and then evaporates and then it rains. I was like, okay, maybe it's like something like that, but it's like the magic cycle. So it's like you're like a magic cloud in the sky or something, and then you rain, and then you get into the ground, and then something happens, and then some of it gets stored for the future, and then some of it, I don't, leaks into the ocean, and I don't know. I don't have a. It just like came up right now, but I was like, I had fun playing with that idea of like it was like the magic cycle, not the water cycle. But yeah, but some part of it happens in the sky, right? But at some point it needs to fall, and it's not like a falling from grace. It's not a falling of shame. It's just falling to nourish where the land is and where things, the realm of materials where things meet and can happen, right? This is the land of possibility.
Yeah, the tears have to go somewhere, right? They don't just stay suspended. And when I was reading about the kind of Mayan view of grief, how when someone dies, right, like the soul gets in a canoe and rows right to the next shoreline, to the beach of stars is what they call it. And then that getting over there, the current is carried, the current they get carried by are the tears of the people in the world that they leave behind. And I had this thought like a while back after kind of reading that and digesting that, is that my tears are like ancestors in some ways. My tears hold the souls of my ancestors, and that the ground is the beach of stars to which they return. And so when I'm crying, I'm actually crying the souls of my ancestors back into the earth, recycling them back into the earth so then that they can take on the new form of whatever they need to be. And it was like, oh, that's cool. Because don't, there's no shame then around those tears. Those tears are actually life feeding life. And I'm returning them to the beach of stars, which is like, oh, that's cool. Because the ground does glisten. Like,
Yeah, of course, the moon is associated with salt water too, because of the ocean.
Yeah.
So that was actually your quote whenever we arrive into this Zoom call. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about salt water and tears, the ocean, or sweat. It was like
Yes.
something that you have as your quote. Maybe I'll
Yes.
put it up in the description. And then something else that came up with that whole idea of the water cycle, because earlier when Issa was saying, like, I don't know if it's constrained, but maybe being on a kite. But before she said that idea of the kite, which I loved too, I was thinking of channeling and different ways that the word channel can be defined, which a channel of water, so like a tributary or something like that, like, but then there's also like channeling a message, like that's what the masculine can receive from the feminine, is the channeled messages from the great mother, the divine femininity. And you know, however that comes out, and sometimes it seems crazy, sometimes it seems unhinged, or you know, but yeah, that was something that came up, was the word channel and the different ways that you can use the word channel for the water cycle and for what this vessel can translate.
Yeah, that, I don't know, that channeling, like, I mean, it reminds me of oracles and stuff, and then it reminds me of the one word that has been really sticking with me lately, which is portal, right? Like something that is like an opening between realms, between things, but also something, you know, that brings things through, which I think is what the feminine does as well, right? So if it's the portal by which things come into this world, then I guess the masculine is you know, the holding space for it. And it's like making the space for this thing that comes through to be able to exist.
Well, the masculine spills the milk, or sow the seed.
Yeah.
And then the feminine is the portal. So it's not just them as container, it's them as initiator.
I like that. Like a triggering spark or something.
Well, and that's what that initiation, right? Is that death, the feminine's in death. You know, the feminine is there in that unseen death space. And it's the men that come and initiate, like you say, come to rescue it, to come to bring it back so that it can sprout and grow and flower, so things can flower. Yeah. And without that, right, then it just all stays hidden. It all stays in that, as we were sort of the Mad Queen, that kind of swirling.
Yeah.
Right? And then come in.
It also stays, I think, a bit stuck. I related to the tears of your ancestors, and I think I don't know if it was last time we talked, Holly, you also said something along the line of like, when you grieve and when you go through grief, you're also like resolving some of the grief of your ancestors too. So it's not just your grief, it's others. And I was trying to find, like maybe alive and death, but I was like, okay, but death, and maybe that's the wrong way to frame it, but death to me sounds like something that was alive then that then died. I was like, okay, but what about, because I'm also grieving for my children and I'm grieving for people that are not here yet too, right? I think we have that capability as humans. So it's also just like I mean, the word I settled on was like the alive and the beyond, like either because they're not born yet or either because they're already passed, but people that are in that realm of not physically existent right now, whatever that is. And yeah, and now where you speak about the feminine being in death, I thought of it that way. It's like, oh, the feminine is in the beyond, and it needs to be brought up into this plane for things to come alive. And maybe the feminine on it could do okay to some extent in the beyond, But then if you don't come here and make things that are alive, then you won't have that duality of the ones that are and the ones that aren't at the same time. So you kind of need that cycling of, I don't know, this looks like a washing machine, but but yeah, that's what came up when you were talking about. It's like, oh, because I was just like, okay, but if the feminine is happy in her, death manner, then why does she need to come up? But then I realized, like, okay, maybe she has to, because that's the only way you get people to come to life, and that's the only way you get things to keep cycling, however cozy her, I don't know, infra world might be.
That's how you get beauty, right? Like the flowering earth.
Yeah, an experience, because when you said portal, I immediately thought about Stargate. And it's funny because Daljeet just wrote about Aquarius season, this time being the portal, and the Stargate. He actually did a whole video on it being the Stargate. And so when you were like, with the Stargate, it's like a construction of a huge, portal that they built, and like you have to go in and punch in the code to go to the right place that you want to go to in time or space. And so, yeah, it was like, in order to experience, just so that they could tell a story, so that there can be a story, so that there can be the fool going on an adventure. It's like there has to be some initiation to it in order for experience for the consciousness to experience. There has to be some sort of way in which the portal can be, I guess, contained. Because if they don't have the portal for the Stargate, then nobody's going anywhere.
Sarah, you and I spoke of humanity suicide in nature this Saturday, and I heard this morning that a colleague of mine committed suicide on Friday. And then before this chat, I was just like, no, I will not let this happen. I will not let humanity commit suicide. For exactly this reason. We are freaking created in the image of God. And we have this opportunity. We alone have this opportunity to experience life as fully embodied, fully embedded, and all the other E's, and conscious beings, highly conscious beings. We can't let humanity kill herself. We just can't.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that I was reflecting on with Anthony Bourdain, was that was what happened, is he killed himself. And so this concept of suicide has been coming up continually, in the collective suicide of destroying our planet, destroying the earth. And what we were mentioning too was that the reason that everybody's jumping on this now environmentalist movement is because they want to conserve our resources, as it's put. And to me, like, it just sounds so like that's not the point. The point isn't so that we can continue to make things. I get, like, invention is wonderful and material items are great, but the whole thing is, like, humanity doesn't exist if we don't clean up our act, literally, if we don't figure out how to, do the cycle. Like you're talking about the water cycle. Well, there's also like a cycle of life where all of the waste that we create could be processed into something that's useful for the earth, but we refuse to do that because, yeah, we feel like we don't have any meaning anymore. The meaning was taken from Gaia. The meaning was taken from the earth. What is she here for? Ugh, to build over, whatever. Let's get rid of it. Any wildlife here, get it gone, because I don't want to get eaten by a predator, or whatever the case is. And so we don't care about it anymore because it's meaningless. So yeah, there's this suicide note that's being written, this manifesto that's being written by our collective humanity of, if it's pointless, then what the fuck are we here for? And it's like, to experience.
You dance like those birds that Holly was saying. doesn't need to be much more than that sometimes.
We're here. We're alive. How beautiful is that? Looking at your beautiful faces, like just being able to be here with you guys, like that's worth it, right?
Yeah, there's nothing more meaningful. Nothing more meaningful than experience. We have to see that. We have to look at it again.
Reclaim our right to be. Not save our resources, save our right to be.
I really feel like we're here to praise, and make more beauty.
Make more what?
Beauty.
Before you said booty.
That too.
These are beautiful.
Queen of Pentacles here. With our mateys.
Yeah, there we go. Full circle. The queen's booty. Yeah. Yeah. We're here to rescue the queen's booty. I like it. The booty of beauty.
Well, that is kind of what we're fighting for, because if we accept that AI will carry consciousness into the future, we are sacrificing the booty part of
our bodies. For some reason, this "we are what we're evolving to do" came to mind. And I think if we're evolving to be computers, then it makes, sense to create this problem of, well, what are we going to do when we run out of resources? Or, what are we going to do when the planet's too cold to live on? It's like, we could adapt, we could evolve if we wanted to, but we are what we're evolving to do.
Which is cool in some ways, because this is what look at what we're doing right now. We're like evolving, or just exploring ways of being with each other that honor and generate beauty.
And playfulness.
It's this heartache that's brought us together,
Yeah, because we could have taken the choice to not commune together, to hide away and do our own self journey, and that is nice to like heal yourself and be in that and share that with people that are around you. But there's something to showing this and doing it on a regular basis, because this is who I am now. I meet with you ladies on one day of the month, and I wish it was more, but this is what I am. So that feels good, to be rebellious in this kind of way that's seemingly insignificant, but it makes huge changes for me and for anybody that listens to us talk, because there's space for it. There's space for the grief, there's space for the sorrow, but there's space for the joy and play in this conversation too.
The bravery of facing the uncertainty of other people, the beauty in that as well, and how fucking proud I feel of us for being so brave. Right?
Yeah.
In the world of the masculine philosophy.
It feels like a call to not deny who we are. not make ourselves small. Which is not, we're not small. I mean, we are. We're all motes of dust ultimately, but brave, beautiful, regal, expansive motes of dust. That I don't want to deny who I am. I don't want to deny who I am.
And I don't want to have to do it all.
Yeah.
I was singing to myself one of the songs from Les Mis before we met, and the red and black one. And then he says, "Who cares about your lonely soul? We strive towards a higher goal. Our little lives don't count at all." And I was like, no, exactly the opposite. What brought us together? Our lonely souls draw us to each other. It's basically Jordan Peterson's, you have to clean your own room first if you want to solve the bigger problem. Care about your lonely soul and find a solution for your own lonely soul. And that solution will heal other lonely souls. Somehow, how, I don't know how, but the ripple effect is very strong.
Yes.
We strive towards a higher goal, yes, but we're going to reach it by caring about our own lonely souls, because our little lives do matter.
Yes.
Very much.
Yes.
To quote Jordan Peterson again, don't underestimate the hole that your life, taking your life would leave, or something along those lines. Don't underestimate.
Don't underestimate the hole your absence would leave. You know, each of us, we're remarkable creatures, and we have something to offer to the world, to the people we love, to the world at large. It's our responsibility to make that manifest, and we move a little farther away from paradise every time that doesn't happen. Really, really.
Please don't commit suicide.
Yeah.
Not you, not any of the listeners, not anybody out there. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah, there's it's hard sometimes, and you get to those breaking points when the emotions are overwhelming and it feels like there's just no way that this could get any better. It'd be better off without me. It's not true. It never is.
And those urges are typically a call for spiritual transformation. Not physical. Physical happens, but it's usually a call for spiritual transformation.
Then we will have to find a way to provide that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're each being called to do something, to participate. Yeah, each of us has a part to play.
There's a word that Sarah said, commune, that really stuck with me because it's been popping up for the past few days a lot. Like commune, which is at the root of communion and communication and community, like all these things. And yeah, I just thought it was interesting because last night I had like this image of a spike of wheat. And I was like, why is this popping up in my head right now before I go to bed, like a random thing of wheat? And then eventually I remember, oh wait, no, this is like, I remember growing up and when I would go to church, that's the song they sing during communion. It talks about like, oh, we're all sprigs of wheat and something. I was like, oh, that. So even my unconscious was like communion. So I'm not entirely sure what that means yet, but it's interesting that that's popping up a lot lately. I think it goes a little bit maybe to what I was saying and we've been saying earlier about like that movement from like, yeah, feeling like tied down and restricted in the presence of others, to going through your whole thing of trying to be your own god, the god of your own little self. It's like that's all fine and mighty, but being the god of a single being, it doesn't really do much. And and then realizing that, oh wait, no, I do have divinity in me, but there's no use to it if it's just restricted to my own life, right? It needs to be part of something. And that thing of holding yourself or letting others hold you while you move into something that is, yeah, this communion, something that is a bit bigger and in service to, you know, to acknowledge the humility of your own life, however little, but also know that you're holding both, right? Like you're feeling like the smallest thing in the world and the biggest thing in the world at the same time. I've mentioned it a few times, but I felt like that a few times this year, and it was like this incredible, I mean, I don't have words for it. It's just this very, very strange thing of like, oh, okay, this is why I'm alive. To recognize that.
When Ollie asked me last time, what do I have faith in? The one thing that popped in my mind is interconnectedness of all things. That's the one thing I have faith in. The smallest and the largest, and connected to everyone and everything.
And that vision of the wheat to me is no accident. You know, it's like our bodies is the yeasty fermentation and of bread, you know, and that we're here to feed each other. We're here to feed each other. Like you said, it does no good if I'm just this loaf hanging. You have to use our bodies to feed each other, and we need other bodies that we can feed on as well.
Well, man, that's beautiful because of communion being the body of Christ. And also, I just wanted to mention that the last thing I have written from my After Socrates notes from John Vervaeke's new series, episode 4, he says, or he breaks down the word communion into common union. And I thought, you know, that's a really good way to summarize what you just said too, is that you are part of a whole. You break bread with one another, you feed from the body, you know, of Gaia, of Christ. And yeah, that's like we come together and we break bread. And that to us means that, yeah, we share something together. There's a part of that. You've gone through the harvest, you've turned it into bread, and now you come together and you share that love, all of the sweat, tears, blood that was put into creating that. So that was really beautiful.
Remember, I started the year with my vision dreams of like making sourdough.
Yeah.
Another ritual for us. Another ritual.
Now it's all
There
making
we go.
sense.
Yeah, oh my God, we need to make bread. Totally.
We need bread with our soup.
Wow. Well, I need to go. People need to feed on my body. But they can't because I've been so nourished and fed by you all. So just really want to thank you for being such delicious, rich, dense, light loaves. I love you all so much.
I love you all very much as well.
Love you.